Hi, welcome to my journey. My name is Cherie. Today is 7/7 portal. It's supposed to be a very big portal, right? And the fact that that Mars happens to be in the house of Leo makes it kind of potent, right? I've been feeling rituals being done for the last 7 days since the full moon, right? And of course, you know, as an interceder, you know, I have to make sure that, whatever's going out is not going to harm the innocent. That's just my purpose. It may not be everybody's purpose, but that's my purpose. And why do I say that? Well, if it wasn't my purpose, then I probably would have never been aware, right? I believe that awareness is for a reason, right? I don't believe in coincidences, okay? So, just like in the spiritual realm, I see a lot of people, who are gifted with sight, and yet, they see a lot of infractions and stuff that are happening to other people, and they don't say not one prayer, to protect the people that they see are being harmed. And I think that's just diabolical, and I hope that they eventually lose their gifts. Okay? That would be my hope and prayer. That, there's no reason for somebody to witness in spirit violations and harmful stuff being done to people, and yet, they don't do a single prayer, against, the travesty of somebody being harmed. Okay? I believe, that's the reason why we have laws in the first place, is, to detour injustices and, people that are harmed, and we have created all of these, laws and stuff in the hopes that, we could bring justice to people, and yet, we see that the justice system is being abused, and, and people are operating, through corrupt behavior, taking bribes, allowing themselves to be lied to, and they don't even investigate, and it's just like, since when did that happen? When we look at our justice system right now, we see how, they're playing these games. Damn it, I didn't get the lowest gas. But I got the lowest in the area where I was at, that's for sure. When we see these games being played where people will, have evidence be, get dismissed out of the court, and then, yeah, things are not working out as they were intended to work out, right? And a lot of times that's because there's so much opposition. Just like if I imagine the world, like when Kennedy was president and he wanted to make the world a different place, there was so much opposition that, they assassinated him. And not only did they assassinate him, right, they also got away with it. The person that was actually charged for killing Kennedy, was a guy that had cancer and that was getting ready to die anyway, right? And then upon investigation, they found out that this guy that, was going to die of cancer, was paid a lot of money to take the fall, as being the assassin. And so, they gave him all of the information that he needed, to confess to the crime. And, and then there were so many sequences of killings that happened afterwards, and yet, it appears as if they had got away with it, right? Because that's like 60 plus years, okay? That, whatever, whomever, conspired to kill Kennedy, and we all can guess that it was a certain party of the military, because Kennedy had tried to, Kennedy, was against the Vietnam War, and Kennedy had laid off a lot of generals and a lot of military, and that's basically how they operated, right? They operated in such a way that the military was out of control, and we kind of almost seen that happen when it came to Trump, right? When it came to Trump, where his protection group, right, did not want to adequately protect him. And it's like, well, if you don't want to do your job, they were going to get fired, okay? But somehow or another, we have this weird reasoning where people feel like, they don't have to do their job, but get paid to be on the payroll. So, yeah. Then we have another group of people, that abrasiveness, let's talk about the polarity. We have another group of people who know that if they stay at a job where they don't want to do the assignments that they are given, that they need to leave that job, trying to change the job, trying to, can be futile. Yeah. Because the employer, probably a man, is going to feel like, you're not only destroying his livelihood, but the welfare of his family and, the welfare of his employees and their families. So he takes it as a war against him. And if you can't prove that he's doing something illegal, then the best thing to do is to get out. Now, when it comes to discrimination, that's going to be a hard thing to prove, because typically, they expect their words to come out of their mouth that's discriminatory. The actions alone doesn't prove discrimination. So that's why a lot of times the best thing to do is to just get out. And then it's still even hard to prove, even if you record them saying derogatory, discriminatory things, to even prove that that is actually indeed their voice and that hasn't been edited. So, yeah. That's, this is what we're looking at about now. And we know that there's going to be discrimination. There's always discrimination, especially when the economy is suffering. When the economy is suffering, there's a lot of discrimination and there's a lot of prejudice, right? Which was one of the reasons why a lot of people, wanted Trump, to come into office and at least, rebuild a well to stop that level of discrimination where people, discriminate and, involve themselves in unfair business practices and, operate with nepotism. But obviously, he was not able to convince the masses. He was able to convince a lot of people, but not everybody. And the ones that, weren't convinced, were very destructive in organizing against, this evolution that was required. Right? Because let's face it, the whole thing is about equality. Equality for women, equality for minorities. If there's equality, then there's no hierarchy. I even posted on my Facebook, how in the world can you sit up here and talk trash, right? And I call it trash where you're like, well, kings and queens. I'm like, I thought you guys had a whole parade about no kings and they didn't say anything about the queens, but they said no kings, right? And that's because they were basically talking about Trump, right? That Trump will become a king. So, but that doesn't say anything. They don't talk about, well, if you're establishing your own hierarchy in your own household, in your own, neighborhood, in your own school, in your own workplace, that's a hierarchy. And that's where the whole kingdom has been established from. That's the whole baseline. is kingdomship, right? If you don't create standards and merits, right, then you make some unseen force, the determining factor, right, of who gets to say what, and what they say matters. And let's be honest, everybody has something to say. Yeah? Everybody has something to say. Even if they don't say it to you, to your face. They're saying it to themselves or to their group, in the background. So then we start hearing about how they want to shut people up. Right? And it's like, how do you justify shutting people up without violating, our First Amendment rights to free speech, right? And that's what we seen that was going on when, you don't allow people to question why a certain thing needs to be done. Sometimes all it is the fact that, they can't understand why something has to be done. They're not necessarily challenging, the procedure, but it's almost like to question is to challenge the procedure. And I think that's where, we are going wrong, right? A challenge would be more like a debate. That's a challenge. And you debate, but a real debate would involve trying to influence the changing of somebody's perspective and their values. And not everybody who questions a procedure is wanting to change another person's mind. They just may not have it understood in their minds why they're doing a thing. And I think it's wrong to tell somebody, you don't need to know why you're doing something, just do it. Now, I know a lot of people was raised in families like that, right? Those families where, they couldn't even question their parents, why, or can I do it this way instead? Or, they never could question their parents. Their parents told them to do something, and the parents did not have time, to entertain different thoughts of their children, and basically chose to be oppressive rather than nurturing. And then as a result, we see that happening in a lot of do the same thing to the people that is around them, telling them to do things. Don't question why they were told to do these things and then not getting the results that they wanted, because, like me, I was allowed to question my father why. And he would tell me why, and then he would ask me what made me ask the question, right? Then I would tell him why I asked the question. I would give him my perspective. And then a lot of times after he had seen my perspective, he couldn't, if he couldn't rebuttal, my perspective, he actually gave in, right? He gave in to my perspective. And I know you all were like, that's not typical, blah, 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 blah. Well, maybe it's not. It just depends on the level of education, your parents had, the intelligence your parents have, and, my parent was very understanding because, I did go to a private, philosopher school. Okay? So, I think that was one of the things that had assisted me in being more magical, because the philosopher school was supplementing my opposite sign, which is Sagittarius. Okay? So consequently, I learned about my opposite sign before I even, became an adult. And one of the reasons why, when, I see Trump doing things, I would look at Trump and I would be like, okay, I've seen his chart. I see that, he has both in and outer, abilities of perspective, because, he's the sun Gemini, and he was born in the house of Sagittarius. So he has the short and long-term perspective of intellect that a lot of people just don't have. So that's why, he is able to maneuver himself on this earth the way he does. It really is all about perception, right? And when you have a decent perception, people can't project onto your perception. Okay? And that's what people love to do. They love to try to change your perception without even a legitimate argument. And I'm like, oh my goodness, how did that happen? How did that happen? People will, want to change somebody's perspective without even a legitimate argument. It's that I told you so Or worse, gaslighting. Gaslighting is the worst. So, that is part of my 7-7 dialogue. On a personal level, I need to clean out my freezers and make sure that, things that I bought that are in my freezer, well, my refrigerator's not a problem. Well, that's not it is. But stuff that I bought in my freezer has to be rotated to where I will consume them appropriately. So yeah, headed back to the house. I'm gonna put on some tennis shoes. I need to leave a pair of tennis shoes in the car so that, if I am riding around here with sandals or flip-flops or who knows, maybe one day. Maybe one day, let me turn around here if I can. Maybe if I can, see. As I said, the first 4 Tuesdays, they have a food pantry here. And I've been wanting to check their food pantry out. But I have not been able to catch them while they were open. I don't think I've ever been up these streets. Oh my God, the community is just... Oh, got these huge walls and fences and now it's got me going all the way around this way and that way. I'm like, wow. So anyway, I thought I would be able to find a street I could turn down and backtrack. No. I'm on Central Expressway now. Like, what the hell? What the hell just happened here? Anyway.